So that kind of leads into LinkedIn. Sam, how would you describe the culture of LinkedIn?
I'd say that out of all the social media platforms, LinkedIn is probably the more professional or corporate platform. So, but at the same time, people will still search LinkedIn to find service providers. But I would say what you were saying yesterday about social media being a place where you represent your personality over and above your brand, I would say LinkedIn is maybe a bit of the other way around, where you represent your brand more than your personality. It's more of like a corporate business vibe.
Yeah, yeah. I like how you put that. I hadn't thought of it that way. And so let's start with, how do you create your brand identity for your business, and maybe de-emphasize you as the brand? What are some of the just kind of quick bullet points that people really should be doing on LinkedIn, and maybe who should be on LinkedIn, who shouldn't be on LinkedIn?
So I'd say, yeah, as I said, LinkedIn is more of a corporate vibe. So I would say where on other social media platforms you maybe wouldn't list your education, for example, on LinkedIn you would. So you would list kind of your education, your history, and then from your brand point of view, you'd give a full-on description of what your company does, what services you offer. Pretty much you could almost replicate the content from your website, like take your about page and put it on LinkedIn. I'd say as much detail as possible, because I think LinkedIn, people really search for credibility. So kind of as much of that as you can portray on your profile, as much detail as you can give. And then obviously you can still have a click through to your website for them to actually book an appointment. But I'd say, yeah, include as much as you can about your professional career, education, and then what your brand does.
Yeah, yeah. Nathan actually just brought up a question that I think ties into this to kind of back up from LinkedIn. He asked about a brand script. And so a brand script is basically how you talk to your ideal client. And what you want to do in that brand script, and this is common in kind of StoryBrand, is a great, it's a great tutorial and podcast that's about specifically branding. And also John Clark is kind of jumping into that branding with your, with his new branding company. But basically the flow is going to be, you want to connect with your ideal client by looking at their pains. What are they dealing with? What's their everyday experience like? And so that could be that you connect with a parent whose kid keeps getting kicked out of school, or you're dealing with a couple that's fighting. What does that look like? Really describing that, and then looking at what are their deep human needs that they want. They want to feel connection. They want to feel like they have love from their spouse. And then from there, what's the transition and you as a guide that ends up happening? And so when you create this kind of brand script of talking to your ideal client and walking them through that transition, it can be really powerful. I just did this with one of my consulting clients where she helps women. She's out in California. She helps women that really have kind of body image. And so what we did is body image issues. And so she starts with, what has she noticed just in her experience? So kind of the internal, here's what she's noticed about body image. And then she went to the macro and said, our society does this, media does X, Y, and Z. She then outlined kind of this macro. Then she brings it back down to the person of the individual is experiencing these problems and issues. And then it goes back to that individual work with her as a guide of what does she see as the outcome of people working with her. And so that kind of brand script then gives her a basic template that she can use across all of her platforms. Of course, she wants to tweak it based on which platform she's on, but it gives her a basic outline that she can pull from. It's sort of like a song list for a band. Like we went and saw Mumford & Sons a while back. They've got their set list, but they have many songs that they could play that aren't on that set list. And depending on where they're at, they're going to switch that out. Same sort of thing with social media. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to pull these things out. So on LinkedIn, a couple of things Sam just hit on is making sure that you have your own company profile. So you can set that in within your own individual, but I have a mental wellness counseling one and a practice of the practice one. That those are the individual companies that I work with or work for, even though I'm the owner, and it's mostly me with my teams, but it's still having an individual one. And then you have your individual profile, which is kind of walking through Joe's work history, where I went to school, all of that. You want to fill that out almost as much as you would a resume, so that people can really kind of see your background. This is the place for you to brag about kind of what you've done, the accomplishments you have, speaking that you've done. So I'd say those would be some of the very first things that people should fill out. And I think that LinkedIn is one of those almost essential things similar to a Facebook business page. To at least have those things, your business and your profile on there. Sam, what do you think? Are there people that shouldn't be on LinkedIn, or would you say that it's one of those things that most people should be on?
I'd say it's one of the things that most people should be on. I think it requires, like pretty much after the initial setup, it requires a lot less effort from there. So I'd say just kind of take the time to set it up. Most professional people have a LinkedIn page these days, and as you said, it is kind of like your online CV, obviously with your associated company page. So I would say it makes sense for everyone to be on it.
Yeah, and definitely put a quality headshot on there. There's so many people that have that little ghost outline. It's like, if you're going to do a LinkedIn profile, at least upload a picture of yourself that's quality. This isn't the place to put a like fun, silly, like too crazy of a photo. Not that you have to be all buttoned up. Like, you know, you want to have some of your personality come out, but you want it to be a little bit more professional than, you know, kind of what you might wear to a networking event, rather than it being your crazy, you know, Bahamas photos. A few things that I've found helpful on LinkedIn, and Sam, you can give some tips also, is the LinkedIn groups. And so this is really helpful. You want to go back to who do you want to attract to your practice. And so if you're working on just your practice, you really want to think local. Or if you do online counseling just in your state, then you might want to do, you know, something a little broader. But you really want to look at those local groups. And so it may be a dad's group that is looking at kind of ways to help their kids learn business skills, or it might be a money management thing, or it might be all sorts of just, you know, Northern Michigan businesses. That's what you kind of really want to look for. Now, if you're also going to be building things that are more national, I know a lot of you have kind of big ideas, or you're launching podcasts or doing things beyond your practice. That's where you want to get into larger groups. So for example, when I first launched Practice the Practice, one thing that I would do is I'd be in a group. Most of the groups, and you want to read their rules, don't allow you to just put blog posts in there to promote them. It gets really annoying. It's not helpful. It doesn't, you know, kind of go back to that you're giving quality content. You're just kind of spamming people. So you want to be careful about that. But what I would do is I'd go into the group. Someone would ask a question like, hey, how do you name a practice? And then I would go write a blog post called How Do You Name a Practice? Write it up, give the first paragraph of that, put that in the comment, and then I'd put the link to that blog post because it applied. In that group, I was allowed to do that. And so that's something that you can use as a strategy that takes a little bit of time, but then the questions that you are asking are the very questions that your ideal client is asking. So that's one strategy. And then I would say also there's the write an article section that's in LinkedIn, and that's basically an internal blog. So you can take your blog post from outside of there and put it into LinkedIn, and that's going to help people find you a little more, see you as an expert within LinkedIn. Sam, what are some other strategies on LinkedIn that people should be aware of?
Yeah, well, I think those are the kind of the two main ones that you've touched on now. Obviously, you can also just do general posts to initiate kind of discussions. Again, it's a bit different from Facebook. Well, you can kind of repurpose Facebook posts on LinkedIn. I mean, that's an option, but it's more kind of a platform to spark discussions. And I'd say don't shy away from connecting with other colleagues as well, kind of, using it as a networking referral tool. So kind of use your updates to maybe spark discussions, or as you say, look for groups that are relevant to what it is you do.
Yeah, and I think that also going back to kind of your own individual profile, you always want to think through the lens of an ideal client is always saying, what's in it for me? Like, can this person help me? Is this person an expert? With all your kind of curriculum vitae, they'll see that, yes, you're an expert with all your different trainings. But in your description, you really want to make sure you're still speaking to your ideal client. And so you're saying, as a mental health therapist, I help couples that are on the brink of divorce. Or, as the owner of mental wellness counseling, what I do every day is I help angry kids, frustrated parents, and distant couples. Through our work, we see transitions where kids aren't getting kicked out of school and couples are staying together. And so you're still speaking to that, but kind of from your own profile. What are a few other strategies that people can do or kind of hacks to speed things up on LinkedIn?
Well, I was just going to say, Joe, what you mentioned earlier about, or what we said about copying your about page and having that brand script kind of present in all your social media platforms and on your website and also taking blog content from your website to LinkedIn also helps a lot with SEO. So if your website is maybe a new website and you're not ranking in like in Google yet. By replicating that content and having it on LinkedIn, you might actually rank through LinkedIn and then get people to your website kind of through like via.
Yeah.
So that's just something to keep in mind as well.
Well, and depending on how high your website's ranking, you know, someone asked, is it a good place to attract couples clients? And I would say yes, because sometimes, you know, if you type in couples counseling, you'll see that LinkedIn profiles, if you're not ranking very high or there's not very many, those will actually pop up in searches. And so I would say, you know, when you look at it, especially if you're looking to attract couples, you know, say someone's on there as a real estate agent and they see that all your kind of posts are going to be around couples work, that real estate agent then might say, oh, I know a couple that, you know, they just got divorced and I'm helping one of them buy a new house. So I would say, yes, absolutely. You can attract couples. You can attract all sorts of different clients. It's just how you do it within that more professional kind of buttoned up approach. There's a question here from Jamila for you, Sam, about how much should be outsourced and does it vary by platform? I think it's a really good question. I want to first talk about one automation that you can set up. You can use this tool called If This Then That. So it's IFTTT. And I set this up years ago, and you can set up what they call formulas. And so every time I have a blog post go live on Practice of the Practice, I have it automatically post to my LinkedIn to say, check out this great new article I wrote. It's called, and then you can set it up so that the title spits in there. And then it has a link to it. And so every time that I do something new on Practice the Practice, it just automatically spits in there. I would say LinkedIn is one of the few places that you can be doing that kind of promotion of your blog posts on a regular basis because it is so professional and people are looking for that professional guidance that fits within that party we talked about yesterday. Sam, what do you think? What should you outsource on LinkedIn or other social media platforms? And what should you really, the clinician, do themselves?
I would pretty much say that everything can be outsourced. I think as long as you initially kind of go through the brief with that virtual assistant so that they have an understanding of your brand and your personality. Obviously, you discuss the type of content that you want to post on the various platforms. And if you're comfortable to share the login details, the virtual assistant can pretty much take it from there with designing posts and scheduling them for you. They can pretty much take it off your hands, and then it would just be up to you to update them with information of new products or services that you want to promote, or if you have some new themes or ideas that you want to kind of share, then obviously the virtual assistant can just include that in the content strategy. But I'd say they can pretty much outsource everything.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up. One thing that is also something that's a great opportunity is it always says when your work anniversary is. And so it makes it very easy for everyone to send you congrats, and you get all these, 50 of these things. Now you can just say thanks, or just ignore them. Or you can say, kind of start a conversation with these people that haven't reached out to you. And so to say, thank you so much. I love working at Mental Wellness Counseling. And then you may want to kind of talk about that, or just, hey, how are things going in your business? And then you kind of get that conversation going. And you never know which one of those is going to turn into a lead. And if for every new client you make $700, that's worth your personal time to be on there for half an hour once a year to develop those conversations. We also have a question from Jamila about, she helps, one of her ideal clients is professional women. Would LinkedIn be a good place to start? And I said, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I could totally see her, especially in the articles part, writing about different aspects of being a professional woman, finding that work-life balance. How do you move from being a stay-at-home mom to being a working mom? How do you, balance the aggression of men and, the way that women are often perceived in the workplace? So challenging a lot of those things. And then also sharing articles that would be similar to your ideal client. And so that might be, Forbes, 40 under 40, things like that are, top most powerful women. Really being around that brand of powerful women, that would be a great place. Sam, what kind of final thoughts do you have in regards to LinkedIn? I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about Pinterest, but what would you say are your final thoughts on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think if your ideal client is anywhere in the range of a professional working adult, then I would say LinkedIn is the place to be. Also, just kind of make sure that you do keyword research and include relevant hashtags and stuff, because all of that is still relevant on LinkedIn as well for when people search for certain things. And yeah, it's a great way to rank in Google, like we mentioned earlier. So yeah, that's about it.
Perfect.